2006, Waltham, Massachusetts, Bentley University. Most of us were just starting our careers at a big corporate job, not really knowing where it was going to go, hoping that we'd make it and climb that corporate ladder. A good friend of mine, Dan Schawbel, wasn't hoping or waiting. In October of 2006, just 5 months after graduating and landing a job at EMC, he was building a blog, writing about personal branding before the term had a Wikipedia page, cold emailing CEOs, getting responses, getting into rooms that most established leaders couldn't imagine. I watched it happen. We were good friends at Bentley, and I've stayed in touch with him throughout the years. I remember even asking Dan what personal branding even meant. It was so new. He went on to write 3 best-selling books, gets his newsletter read by over 250,000 people on LinkedIn, has put more than 380,000 professionals through his courses. He's built a research and thought leadership agency that works with enterprise businesses like Amazon, Oracle, and Deloitte. And here's the thing that's really crazy. There are founders out there right now running serious companies doing real numbers who are invisible, completely off the grid. No presence, no authority, no platform. That's what I call the authority gap. Dan could have been one of them, but he chose not to be. And today we find out exactly by making that choice what he has gained. This is Return on Reputation. Thank you for being here. Mic check. We're on. I am pumped to have you on the show, man. Actually, when I started doing this, I was like, I just thought of you because of everything you've done, the amazing. And I laughed to myself because when we were right out of Bentley, we'll get into this in the show, but I think, I don't know if you officially take credit for this, but I think you coined the word personal branding.
No, I wish.
Well, then you were just way ahead.
I definitely pushed hard on it. That's for sure. Personalbranding.com, personal branding blog, personal branding magazine, I just created a whole universe around personal branding, but from our age group. And so people in our age group probably think of me more when it comes to personal branding, but I was inspired by Tom Peters, who wrote In Search of Excellence. That's like one of the more famous business books. It actually created the business book genre. So, in business, it's especially with books, a book has to be successful for investors, publishers, everyone to say, oh, let's have more of these books. So he was the one that wrote In Search of Excellence. And then that opened the floodgate for business books a very, very, very long time ago. But Tom Peters is, he wrote the funny thing is he wrote the cover story, The Brand Called You, in Fast Company in August 1997. And then I was profiled in Fast Company literally that day, 10 years later. It was a week after Tim Ferriss was profiled in Fast Company around personal branding. So that's like,
you're up there with the great.
That's like the kind of crazy genesis for how all that worked. But the story is even crazier. I kind of fell into all this, truthfully. Like I was obviously very, I was living personal branding for my whole career, really. And so when social media surfaced, I saw that kind of as a path at the cost of your time to be able to get my name out there based on my ideas and, my perspective, which was someone who was pretty young who understood digital marketing, especially using those tools early on. I knew it would be successful because I was like, it's so obvious that it was going to be successful, right? It's not like social media is going to go out of style like the metaverse did. Like this is something that's free. It's back when we were in college, we had Facebook. It was the Facebook our sophomore year of college, right? I was in,
that's right.
I was in,
and all of a sudden you can,
junior year of college. It was junior year of college. And this guy, Chris Pardee.
Yeah.
Do you remember that name? Yeah. So he ran down the hall and he's, you got to check out the Facebook. It has pictures from last night's toga party or whatever it was, right? And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And it really was pictures. I think this is why Instagram blew up, because Instagram just focused on the multimedia component.
Right.
And that's why Facebook and Meta had to acquire them. But you want to know what happened last night? You were there. You had to get on. And it was only we were like the 16th college because it was mostly New England focused back then. And then obviously LinkedIn and everything grew from there. But really social media blew up in 2007. 2006 is when I really got in with blogging, but 2007 was real traction. The media started taking it seriously. That's when things really, really took off.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this is back, everything is new. Nothing, you're describing this for the audience. If you didn't know this, basically Facebook was not a feed. There was no feed. It was like literally who your friends were. You got extra push if you changed your profile image at that time. And so we graduated 06. You do everything. You did exactly what we were supposed to do from Bentley, land a corporate job. You were at EMC in marketing.
It was really hard to get that job too.
Yeah.
And so that's
Sure.
really important to note is I've been working since I was 13, first internship at high school, cold calling, 7 more internships in college. Sophomore year of college, I started a graphic design web development company, catered to small local businesses.
Yeah.
Like really, really bare bones. In job interviews, I'd bring a CD portfolio of my work. I had a business card with my picture on it. I had my own website. I was living all this stuff pre-social media, right? And so that helped me. I remember I was doing one interview and I bought that CD portfolio, which is funny. That really ages us, right? No one has CDs anymore for the most part. You can't even get them built into new cars. And they looked at it and they're like, oh, this one's a keeper. And there's little hints like that because I thought I was doing the right things. Yeah. But like with those interviews and interactions, like when they're like, oh, this was really smart. No candidate's ever done this before. It kept reinforcing what I was doing and validating that this was something that allowed me to stand out and get opportunities where others may have struggled. And so,
and is that where you were like, this personal branding thing works, and you were all in on it?
I called it more like self-marketing. I'm marketing myself. It wasn't personal branding until I read Tom Peters' article, but basically to get that job at EMC, it took me 8 months, meeting 15 people for 3 different positions.
Yeah.
So I got rejected those 2 other times. One was the marketing leadership development program. And I later found out I didn't get it because they viewed me as being overqualified because I didn't stick to the whole 1-page resume back then. It was 2.5 pages. Yeah. Because to me, it's someone might have 1 or 2 internships and a few leadership positions on campus, but I was doing so much that I wanted to capture that, and it was impossible without more than 1 page. But the cool thing was when I eventually got that job, I had this moment in early 2007 where I was like, I don't know if this is really what I want to do anymore. Like, because I was in like a training class for 8 hours on all the products, solutions, services that EMC offered. And at this time they had acquired like 40 companies, and it was very like technical, like Symmetrics and Clarion. Like I didn't understand any of this stuff. And actually the class made me less interested in the company and question my career.
Wow.
That's what the class did, which was great because I came home and I was on Google and I was like self-marketing and branding. Like because I originally wanted to, after graduating Bentley, work as a brand manager at Procter & Gamble. That's the genesis of my uncle's career. I thought that was interesting. I liked branding, like that all clicked. And then at home, I'm like Googling and trying to find, and then I came across personal branding and Tom Peters' Brand Called You article. And I read it and it resonated so much. It was like, you're the brand called you. At the end of the day, success is in your hands. You're the chief marketing officer. Like that all made sense to me because that's what I had been doing. And that was my mindset. Yeah. And from there, I started buying up all the 50 domain names. Like I was already in. I was like, this is it. This is the validation I needed. And it didn't really talk about social media that much, a little bit, but it was just really early when it came out. And so then I was like, I started a blog. It originally was on Blogspot, then eventually WordPress. But yeah, writing, I wrote.
So you listened
like
to his
14 times a day, 14 times a week.
Yeah. You were listening to his ideas and you're like, this makes sense into this new world. I'm combining it all and I'm running with it.
It was more validating. It was like, this is what I've been doing. And this article says that what I've been doing is really smart and will potentially lead to success. And I'm like, there's no one else our age talking about it. I don't want to present myself as an expert. So back then I positioned myself as the personal branding spokesperson for back then Gen Y, now more or less referred to as millennials.
Yep.
And that was my way of also positioning myself. I do this for this audience. So that was my logic back then. It's all about positioning, which is all it's branding.
Yeah.
And then wrote 12 blog posts per week. Eventually built a community around that. I commented on any single blog that mentioned personal branding. If 50 blogs wrote articles about personal branding in a week, 50 comments from me. That's how I got out there. That's how I networked with a lot of people. And the other thing that I did, which in hindsight was one of the smarter things, is I interviewed everyone in the industry. So back then it was called the Ad Age 150, which was the top 150 marketing and social media blogs. And it was a whole ranking system. And me and everyone, we just became obsessed with trying to rank as high as we could back then. That was a huge deal in the industry. And I looked at that as a list of people I could interview. Like that list did the work for me. And so I interviewed pretty much everyone on the list, top 70 people on the Darren at ProBlogger, like Jeremiah Oyang, who I'm still connected with. Everyone on that list, I need to meet. Clearly, this is the list. And that ended up being really smart. And that eventually led to me interviewing famous George Foreman and various Jerry Springer and those people back then, which eventually, to today, Matthew McConaughey, Natalie Portman, Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
But that was the idea. Start small. Some of the people I interviewed, you've never heard of before. Build. Hey, I've interviewed these 20 people. I'd like to interview you. Building all those connections. And then that led to me being able to establish Personal Branding Magazine, right? Because now I had people who wanted to be part of this personal branding world. Yeah. And back then, if you Google personal branding, I own 7 of the top 10 search results, which was pretty crazy.
I think you was coining the term. I think you just went off, you crushed it.
I looked at that. I want that to be my homepage. That was the mindset back then. And so how do you do that? I need personal branding everything, and then I need everything to link to everything and constantly market it. So it was always a work in progress. But another thing that I was always curious about was PR, right? Mm-hmm. I was like, because part of Tom Peters' article is branding creates more visibility. Visibility multiplies was more or less what he said, which I thought was really interesting because, especially back then, you've heard of someone and then because of that, you might write about them and then it just triggers this avalanche. And that's a lot of my research campaigns. They work like that as well. And even the book launches, you get the initial boost and then people have read that, so they're now interested in maybe writing or sharing about it. So that was the idea. But back then, I was like, oh, Tom Peters' article is a Fast Company. And let's see who else writes about personal branding for Fast Company. So there's this woman, Wendy Marks, back then. And I created my little campaign to get her to write about me, truthfully, because I was out of curiosity. What could this do? It turns out it does a lot. Turns out back then, if you got an article written about you, it could change. I got invited to speak at Google. I was able to create the first social media position at EMC. They had no idea what I was doing inside of the company. And because of that article, somebody in PR sent it to an executive, and then they hired me internally to write my own job description. I was a nobody at the company. And then that obviously changed the equation. And that really inspired the book and everything else, because the whole idea was visibility creates opportunities. And before that, it was me hustling almost, and you understand this, like I was like pledging a fraternity to try and get a role at EMC. And now I'm at EMC and now they're coming to me for what I've done outside of work to create this new role, which is highly relevant. And the company had won a lot of awards with the Twitter account, the Facebook account, all the work I had done with them, because I was also building a profile and building the connections to be able to support that. And then eventually, obviously I left EMC and then just was, went out on my own with the book. Yeah. The book was the kind of the transitional piece, Me 2.0.
Me 2.0.
I did the whole campaign for it. I networked with people in other countries, got that book in 13 languages. Like my agent for the last 2 books was like, you're scrappy. You're the hardest working author I've met. And he represents Tom Brady and all these people. And it's because I developed my own. The second book was in the New York Times list. I've orchestrated every campaign because that's just what I know how to do.
I think you're one of, if not the most hardest working people I know. And I say that with like huge admiration. I think in just listening to you to just speak this whole time, most people. So I'm right now, I've developed this framework. It's called the authority gap. And I think because a lot of people start working, right? They just go all in, they do the work, they build from there, and they become an expert in their field, but no one really knows them publicly outside of their inner circle of influence. And I think it costs people millions, literally millions. Listening to your story, you didn't wait to do the work like slow and steady. You were just like, I'm getting out there. I'm going to build a brand. I'm going to own this channel. I'm going to own the term personal branding. I remember one time, I think we were in New York City or wherever we were over the years. And I said, Dan, how are you getting these people to talk to? Like, how are you getting inside these rooms? And I don't know if you remember, you were like, sometimes it takes 50 to 100 emails.
Yeah, it really, it's to a point now because I'm sending over 100 emails a day, 7 days a week. It's just,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it's more automated now than it was.
Yeah, but it wasn't then, right?
It wasn't then. It was honestly, even up until a few years ago, like for a campaign, I'd reach out to I'd send individual emails to hundreds of people and follow up with hundreds of people for a campaign.
It's like similar to what Gary Vee talks about.
Yeah.
I was up till 4 a.m.
You got to be immune to rejection. That's the only way it works. Even with interviewing the celebrities, like I have to like just keep going and keep following up. And rejection was like, now is not a good time.
Yeah.
Come back in another year or two, or when someone has a new project. So it was always that mentality of keep going back, keep going back. And it's honestly, it's the same thing today. I think the business world is 50 times harder than it was a year ago. 50 times harder
than a year ago.
Oh yeah.
Because
I would say actually between 1 and 2 years ago, business like was relatively easy, like to get sales. Now it's the amount of fragmentation, the competition, the squeeze on in the workplace such that people are less willing to talk to people they don't already know. So actually, I would say the personal branding component is 5,000 times more valuable today than even a year ago.
That's what I see too. And I think AI is only exacerbating that further. I think there's so much AI slob that we talk about it, you hear about it nonstop. I think there's good ways and bad ways to use it. AI, at the end of the day, it's a tool. But I want to highlight just what you just said really quick before we move on. You said without having fear of rejection. There was no fear of rejection.
I mean, you can imagine. I'm reaching out to the most successful people. So I'm still not, it's not, I don't know. I always use Phil Collins is my favorite.
Okay.
So it's not like Phil Collins is like calling somebody and being like, I want to talk to you. Like he could talk to whoever he wants. Like we're still at a level where it's like, they could easily say no and just go on the Today Show tomorrow morning. You know what I'm saying? So it's and there's another component too that's really important. You're competing with all these other people who are trying to interview them too, because it's not, there wasn't like a million podcasts 10, 20 years ago.
Right.
There wasn't even that many blogs 10, 20 years ago. So there's so many people who are vying for people's time now that it makes sales harder and it makes soliciting interviews harder.
Right.
Because you're one of so many people, and then you have whole teams that are like, these 400 people want to interview my celebrity or whomever.
Yeah.
You have to do it by follower count, they have to like filter it somehow, almost like you're applying for a job. And so it's much harder now. Actually, the best time was during COVID, right? Because a lot of these actors, they weren't doing that much. So I mean, if you look at the caliber of people I got during COVID versus maybe before COVID, totally different ballgame. And now it's again much harder because everyone's busy. So a lot of these people are in multiple movies a year now. Like there's just a lot more. And the demands for doing press. Look at the Mario movie. These people,
massive,
did unbelievable amounts of press for it. Like they don't have time.
Yeah, that's true. But you also have a lot of people listening, I think, are afraid to make the plunge into getting their name known publicly.
Yeah. Let's start small. Like I went from my own blog to other blogs you've never heard from. I got a break with Brand Week magazine back then. And then I leveraged all of that to get the next one. And even with everything started with things you haven't heard of before, with smaller platforms, smaller people.
Right.
And then it was
I think it's
growing over time.
building that muscle over time.
Yeah.
But was there ever a point where you were afraid to post something? For what
No,
people
I would say
you or anything like that?
not that I remember, but I think it's more so now. I think there's a lot of risk, especially working with big companies in today's, political, social climate is much harder now because these risk teams hold things much longer. It's a much more complicated process. There's a lot more sensitivities because really my goal is how do I get people talking about this research study? And to do that, there needs to be controversy. It's got to be relevant. It's got to be bold. It's got to be a unique framing or result. And that creates some risk for companies, especially the big ones that I work with. So I would say that's what's more complicated now versus even a few years ago.
Interesting. What? So I think what finally wakes someone up to the fact that being invisible rather, is a business problem?
Pain. You have to be failing and question, hey, what can I do to stand out more? Even again, like much more competition now, much more pressure.
Yeah.
People are getting laid off. It's got to trigger. I got to do something different. What can I do?
Right.
So you almost have to, a lot of people just pressured to change their day-to-day strategies and work and focus.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's pain. Pain creates the pressure to make those type of changes. And also knowing somebody, like you were saying earlier, you knew me. And so, hey, Dan, if Dan could do it, like I went to the same school, so maybe I could do it. You know what I mean? It's also like knowing people who are like you, who have done things.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And I think that's true. I think that's true for entrepreneurship and your career as a whole, everyone. Yeah.
Like, I think we both got a 4.0 in GB 101. I don't know. Like that class wasn't hard, but I had to, in college, you don't know this, but like my wife probably could study the night before a test and then get a 4.0, right? For me, even for GB 101 or whatever class, I've had to spend like weeks studying because I had to lean more on my kind of work ethic than me just being born brilliant or anything. So I think that's what you've seen from my career as well. It's this hustle. It's just really working, not giving up and all that, instead of me just being a genius. I was a B student in high school, an A student in college, but I worked my brains out in college across the board too.
Yeah.
Right? Not just the classes.
Yeah.
I was in 8 student organizations, including the Entrepreneurship Society.
Very similar in that regard.
Yeah. Just really active. I was the party chair for my fraternity. I was just very active.
Yeah.
And I think that was really useful. But again, it's like you learn these skills when I was 13 catering, like how to deal with difficult people and you know what I'm saying? And then cold calling, I
still think
very
everyone's
hard
in the service business at one point.
I agree. I say that too. Yeah. But even when I had my internship cold calling, it's there has to be a better way. And what's the better way? It's more the inbound marketing. It's more of the personal brand building. Yeah. So it's all these experiences build and shape how you view the world and where you want to invest your time.
Yeah. So, all right, you've been publishing, you've written three bestsellers or 4?
Yeah. 3.
3.
Yeah.
3 bestsellers. You've shown
again,
up
it's
20 years. Wait, hold on. Because a lot of people will do this. They'll start and they'll give up in like month 3. Like you've been at it for 20 years. Is that how you view everything? Is like this is a long-term game? Like I'm in it for the long haul. I'm going to just outwork everybody. What's that honest reward for staying in the game that long?
I think things have changed now. I just want to focus on quality, right? And that goes back to everything I've just said. There's so much out there. There's so many. We published a study. We published a study like a few days ago, an AI study, and every big company wants to tell their AI story. We've been telling a lot of AI studies using data, which is our framework and what we're incredibly good at. but it's just focusing on quality, making it unique, like making this one stand out, because when our study came out, a study by MIT came out, and they're going to get a lot of love because it's MIT. So
Yeah.
it's, you just have to focus on, I feel like focusing on quality now is really important in the age of, as you were saying, AI slop
Yeah.
and just the amount of the fire hose of content and studies and everything out there, number of books. There's way over 1 million books published a year, but like back from, I think I like read from like 1960 to 1980, it was like 40,000 books published a year, something like that. You have to look it up. But the idea is there's just so much more out there. Like my first book, so much easier to get media articles. Like it was like everywhere, right?
Compared to the last one.
Yeah. And so I just look at it, and it's each book, it's just much harder to market it.
Mm.
And that, to me, it's not as interesting.
Yeah.
Whereas I look at the research studies as it's a little bit less of a commitment. They're interesting. Like I think the challenge, like for a book, it's like, I don't want to write another AI book. I don't want to write an AI book. And everyone in my industry is writing an AI book. And I obviously I've done like 40 studies on AI, but still it's like for business books, especially, like we're at a point in time where you could just find out all that information online, or AI can write you a book. It's been highly disruptive, but I have a lot of friends who have been writing books, and it's still great for speaking. It's still really good for aspects of your business. It's, again, a great transformational piece going from your company to your solo career. Look at all those CEOs, not all of them, but a lot of CEOs at big companies, you'll know that they're leaving their company because they have a book coming out like 6 months later, and then they go on the speaking circuit. So like it's in politicians the same way. So it's a books, from what I've seen through my career, are great transitional moments, transitional platforms.
Yeah. Yeah. So so I think a lot of people here listening, they're like, hey, I don't have time to do any of this. Right. They don't have time.
I didn't have kids then.
They don't have time to build a personal brand. They don't have time to post on LinkedIn. You run a research firm, right? You publish constantly, you speak globally. How do you think about time and putting a platform together? Or are you delegating? Like how do you do it?
Yeah, I delegate most of the research projects, aside from the topics in the vision and the contracts, and then the media execution and marketing execution. That's all delegated. That's all delegated. So that frees up a lot of time. And I would just say,
do you still handle your own social?
Yeah, I do. I've never had the guts to delegate that. I've had obviously a lot of opportunity over the years to delegate it, but I don't know. It just doesn't feel right.
Right. Yeah.
And so I just do it and commit 1 post a day, now 7 days a week, just more or less what I've done for many years, but I'm more concentrated now.
So on that, do you think, you just said quality over, I don't know if you said over quantity.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Or do you believe in just like it's quality first, no matter the quantity at all? Because you've got,
I think both
out there,
both,
and other people talking about, hey, like now you have to post 10 times a day just to get through the noise.
Yeah, I don't know if that I don't see evidence that would work.
Okay.
But I do believe like the more you post, the higher likelihood that one of the posts will take off, right? So I think you could look at it like that. But the problem is that doing 10 posts a day, it's do people who are following you want to see 10 posts a day from you every day? I don't know. I'm not convinced maybe there's something in between, maybe a 5 or a 3. Like I think 10 is aggressive unless you are famous.
I think to put out
unless
10
you're famous,
really good pieces is extremely difficult.
Really hard, because a good piece takes a long time to put out.
Yeah. Even if you're using AI, like a lot of people are using AI, and it's very clearly AI, right? You read it everywhere. And AI is this AI, it's a human AI sandwich, right?
It's at least 60% of all content on LinkedIn is AI generated. It's probably even more, probably 80%.
Is it really?
Oh yeah.
Wow. You get all the AI comments as well. You can see that, which is incredible. But I don't think that's helping personal brand, right? I don't think it's helping build your authority if you just like prompt and walk away. Like prompt and post does not work.
Oh, I don't, I just think it's consistent. I think some of the same branding rules have always applied. You got to be consistent. You got to have your unique voice. You have to be authentic. You just have to, and you have to stand out by having your unique lens on a given topic, right? Like that is really
100%.
important, right? And so like
I think you need to be contrarian at some level.
Yeah. So a little bit. I think that's why I've always leaned on the research, because I'm like, what will always make this unique? I've done almost 100 research studies.
Wow.
I mean, that to me is, the books are interesting and people will comment on the books, but I think the 100 research studies, like even people who work with research firms, like you just don't see that. We're talking huge. Now, I can tell you some of the numbers are absolutely ridiculous at this point, because it's been so many. I keep a whole archive of all of these, and I can tell you right now it's 3.183 million people interviewed
through your research report.
Through surveys. And yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So we've captured that much.
Wow.
And this is like executives, this is employees, this is managers, directors, HR leaders. And this is 26 countries. So it's very, very unique. And we were also really early into AI. We were doing AI at work studies with Oracle from 2017 to 2021. And they revolutionized Oracle back then. It was so big that the global CMO said every single marketing communication group at Oracle has to do one of these studies. Like it was so big. They won 5 awards, thousands of pieces of media coverage, viral hits, because my formula was every year we'd ask 10, 20 of the same questions. And then the other questions would all be something net new around a theme. And that formula I still do today. And I think it is the winning formula, because you get two things. One is you get year over year, what's the AI adoption rate year over year, let's say. Yeah. And that's an interesting number. And you can build a whole moat around that, right? That idea of we're following AI adoption year over year. And we do this with one of our clients is VSP Vision, which is the largest high insurance provider.
Okay.
And we ask some of the same questions every year, and other companies might not have done that. And then over time, like with Deloitte, well-being, what's your emotional well-being, physical well-being, all those type of questions, like all the dimensions of well-being. And we ask it every year. So you can track how employees and C-suite feel on an annual basis. And you can't go back if you're, let's say PwC, EY, KPMG, you can't go back and do a well-being study from years ago. Right. So if you're Deloitte, now you have all this data and you can create these larger messages, and the study becomes a keynote presentation. It becomes content. It becomes everything. And so I do believe that research is the kind of enabler for a whole platform, right? You can do, and we do all this, like you can do a webinar based on the research study. You take maybe a customer, a prospect, executive at your company, an analyst, whomever, and you get them to talk about the results of the study and what it means for their business, let's say, or the industry, a keynote speech, because the way our research is conducted, it's very problem solution oriented, right? It's what are the problems, like for this company, Writer, it's an enterprise AI company. We had the study just come out. The problem that we found was, hey, different functions within an organization, different levels of seniority, they're all fighting about AI and who gets a say in it and all this stuff. And so that creates the problem, the friction that AI creates, pushing all these new tools on these workers. But then the solution using various questions becomes Writer, right? Yeah. So that's the idea. It's like you create the drama, the friction between different groups, which gets the media attention. But then you have marketing related questions that get at, hey, Writer offers these things, and these things would solve this problem for the organization and bring the organization together. So my secret sauce is I understand how to leverage survey questions to craft the story from start to finish, which then enables a whole campaign to be successful. Because I've done 8 with Deloitte, done like 12 with UKG. So I've done so many at this point that I know what works and what doesn't. So I have this extra sense. Because these projects, they're expensive. They take 5-6 months. Like they're very involved.
Are they commissioning you? Like, how does that work? do you pitch the research to them first, or are they saying, "Hey, Dan, we want to run this campaign, and they commission you for the research?" Or how does
Yeah. So I honestly, my philosophy is it's really about where the demand is, right? Where's the demand right now? And the demand is on AI. It is what it is, right? I've done so many that most of our studies are AI focused because that's where the demand is. So I'm all about, here's the demand. What does your company do that aligns with the demand? And let's craft a story around that. That's really what it comes down to. Because without the demand, then what are we doing? It's not going to achieve your KPIs, right? So I'm very into demand.
And then through the research, you help build their thought leadership.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So the VSB Vision annual study, like the Deloitte annual well-being survey, like that's the idea. It's year over year. How are we progressing on this topic? And then what is fresh as it relates to the current economy, what people are talking about on social media. Like my favorite example, honestly, so this is the cover story for the New York Times, and it's all based around this headline. About 50% of CEOs say some of, if not all, their jobs should be automated by AI. And that headline, the genesis of it, came from all those studies that came out and are still coming out, Anthropic and World Economic Forum saying X percentage of the workforce will be automated by AI in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And me posting about it, and then the comments saying they want to automate our jobs, but what does the CEO actually do? And then that went into my thinking, and because I'm always crafting new survey questions and ideas. And so I translated that into survey questions to then get that as a headline, to then use that as a campaign. And then that led to real success. So very cool. That's my favorite research story, I think, because it just shows it's not just you can find out what's hot, not just by reading articles and seeing what's out there and maybe having those experiences, but also based on the reaction to those kind of ideas and the news and other studies.
Yeah.
And and then the other great example I like to give is we did one with Upwork that was really, really successful. The idea was there's different takes on AI adoption and usage and how, because the hottest topic still, but like even more so a few years ago, was AI and productivity. Huge topic. Because when you think of AI, it's usually framed as this is going to make everyone more productive. So we interviewed the C-suite, we interviewed employees to really capture the impact of AI when it comes to productivity. And we found that it was like 96% of executives say AI is boosting productivity, right? And that doesn't surprise anyone, right? Because that's what they're championing. That's what they're pushing in their organization.
Of course.
But we found that over 70% of employees say it's adding to their workload. So it's the perfect headline. It's the perfect thing to draw you in because it shows you what the gap is.
Right.
Your executives think it's boosting. Employees think it's not boosting. It's actually hurting them. Yeah. And that creates the friction, which then opens up the conversation of why is this happening and what can we do about it? It's perfect.
Brilliant. It's true. And I think, it's certainly on everyone's minds. Everyone I talk to feels like they have two jobs now. They have the job they have, right? I have to be good at this job. I also now have to learn AI and be really good at AI. And I can't keep up. And there's some new things happening every day. I think at this point within AI, it's not even optional. I think it is required to spend a few hours a day learning it and incorporating it into your daily life. So
I'll give you an example. So the new study that I was mentioned with Ryder, 60% of companies plan to lay off employees who won't adopt AI.
Yeah.
And so why that's awesome is, whether it's awesome or not, why it's a great headline, let's say.
Great headline.
It's a great headline, and here's the genesis of that headline. I saw that I'm a junkie for these studies and for business and HR and workplace news, right? Mostly 7 days a week, weekends with the kids harder. But I saw that there were certain companies that are saying if our employees aren't using it, that they'll get laid off, or the ones that are using it will get a promotion. Like I saw so many and they're embedded into performance reviews and all these things.
Yeah.
And I was looking, is there any stat that shows that this is a bigger thing nationally? And in this case, it was a global study, globally.
Wow.
And there wasn't. So I'm like, oh yeah, this is great because this conversation is not going to die. This is going to be an ongoing conversation because this whole idea of AI impacting employment, we're going to hear about for at least another few years. So there's always going to be another news cycle of a company saying we lay off employees because AI is making us more productive or whatever it might be. This will do well because it fits into what people are talking about, but there's no stat to back it up, and we have the stat to back it up.
That's amazing. Going back to earlier, you had said at the top of the show, you said, hey, business is harder than ever before.
Yes.
It's harder to break through. It's harder to build personal brand. It's harder to build authority.
In 10 years, we'll be saying it's 5 times harder than it was 5 years. You know what I'm saying?
That's where I'm going with this. You just read my mind. How much time right now do you think someone listening, they're like, oh shit, I've heard this whole show. I need to build a personal brand. How long do they have right now?
I mean, the sooner the better is the only answer. Is the sooner the better. But I mean, that's just what it is. I'll give you another. I have actually a really cool stat for you.
This is a now thing.
Yeah, it is a now thing. Well, it's a yesterday thing. That's
always been a yesterday thing. Yeah, but it's getting worse. AI is. You have to assume AI is not going to get worse, right?
No, it's not going away because it's such a big part of the economy. Like the whole country revolves around AI working out. This is not like the metaverse not working out. Like how many companies were really like maybe a little bit as for experimentation, but not like this. This is like they're putting data centers that are bad for the environment all across the country. Like,
this is the next wave.
If this doesn't work out, we're a lot for 401ks. Everyone's screwed if this doesn't work out because everyone's so invested in these companies that have tremendous amount of debt. It is what it is, right? So it's hard to go against and this is all anyone cares about, for better or worse. I would say maybe for worse because it's to do 5,000 AI studies is not as interesting as a few years ago where you could do a study on this topic, this topic, this topic, this topic. Now, no matter what you talk about, it's like, what's the AI angle? So that's what we're living in. But it's also interesting because, once you've done enough of these studies and once you see enough, you're like, the challenge is, how do you make it interesting? Yeah. How do you make something that's always out there interesting? That's the challenge.
And that I would say that's also the challenge. Just as you build your if you're listening, right? That's the challenge as you post content and build your personal brand. How does my opinion matter? Why is it interesting? So I love that you're doing this for huge enterprise companies. And I think it's probably a massive moat because of the content you're creating, or the research rather. It's original insights. It's ahead of the curve on a lot of these topics. So I think it's a real moat that people have if they work with you. So
thank you. I appreciate it. I'll tell you another thing that's interesting before we go.
No, I got a rapid fire close.
Oh,
I got a rapid fire. So we got to make time for that.
All right.
What were we going to chat? What were we going to say?
What I was going to say is the most interesting stat that I've ever seen, which really is an incredible picture of pre-post COVID when it comes to the workplace and how people feel about working and their jobs. So we asked a question. This is still my favorite, honestly. I think it's so unique and no one else has a stat like this because we just fell into it. Like we did a whole study, which became the first 4-day work week study, which is obviously like everyone knows 4-day work week, but we did that original study. And the question we asked to get to that was, if pay was constant, how many days a week would you work? And it was 0 to 5. And so before COVID, only no more than 4% said 0. So what is that? Before COVID, the takeaway, and the most amount was 4 days. So before COVID, the takeaway is people don't want to work 5 days a week.
Yep.
But people want to work. Because 4% said 0, as in they don't want to just make this, make X amount of dollars for doing nothing. So there's some level of dignity and activity in doing work.
Yeah.
Post-COVID, when people were getting furloughed, laid off, you couldn't really be around people in office. Like it was just all of that happened. it really shook up the workplace. It made people prioritize life more truthfully.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got the exact opposite results when we did it after COVID. So we had a high percentage of people that said 0 and
Really?
way fewer people who said 4 or 5. And if you look at the graph, it's the exact inverse. It's fast. To me, it's so fascinating.
That's crazy. Why? What's the reasoning?
Because people rethought
They're
what
like,
mattered to
"I don't
them.
work anymore."
That's it. People, because again, you're spending time at home. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, wow, maybe I should spend more time with my kids and family or do activities and social things. Like it made them question work and life in a way in which at least hasn't happened since I've been alive. And so to me, that picture is very interesting. And it's like, it fell into it a little bit. And I want to ask that question again, because I think it's going to be even more so, as in there'll be even more people who say 0 now versus 2021.
Do you think it's that they don't want to work, or it's that they don't want to work in the jobs they have?
I think that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Because I think if you can do your own thing, right? Like personally, I don't feel like what I do is work. I like what I do. It's fun.
Yeah.
I love it. And you've done the same thing. You've built your own path. You've built your own journey, same as me. And when you think I've worked with wealth management firms and they talk about retirement, and I don't know if people actually want to retire in the true sense of the term.
Yeah.
Want to do something, but I think retirement, like I do nothing, is very boring. And I think that comes back to, so if they don't like doing the thing they do because they're in the job they don't like,
Yep.
is it, now I'm going to bring it full circle for us here, is it personal brand? Is that their jump, the way they can jump ship and do their own thing by building that brand first and then having a launching pad? So
I always looked at it as currency and the ability to be mobile.
That's why we call it authority capital.
Yeah. You can be mobile. I could be Dan at this company or that company. And I'm bringing, especially if you stay in the same industry, I'm bringing all of this from the industry with me.
Yes. No, I completely agree.
As in, like, let's say hypothetically, I'll give you a hypothetical and then let's wrap it up. The hypothetical is, let's say I was like, I don't want to be independent anymore and I want to work at X company.
Yeah.
If that company hires me, they don't just get Dan, someone who knows how to do research or marketing or whatever, or social media. They're getting somebody who has a newsletter of 380,000 people. Like, you're getting a lot more than just Dan, the person who could get this one job done.
Right.
The package is bigger.
They're getting the entire network and distribution channel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah. It's definitely currency. I completely agree with you. All right. Rapid fire round. Rules are short, fast. You can even skip if you want.
Okay.
One thing a founder should do this week to start closing the authority gap and build their personal brand.
Research self-reflection. Interesting. Right?
Okay.
I think that's where it all starts. That's why in Me 2.0, I had 4 steps to building your brand, and the first one was discover.
Okay, cool. I love that. All right. The biggest visibility mistake smart people make.
Putting something out there without any thought or meeting.
Okay. Just like a prompt and post. Best room you've ever gotten into. Like the best person you've interviewed. Because that stands out. You already shared a lot. So if you can skip this one if you want. But I think you said Phil.
Hulk Hogan. The story is great too. But this is quick, so we can't tell it, I guess.
Okay. Last question. What's the one business book, we'll say that you gifted or shared with the most people? It can't be one of yours.
Now Discover Your Strengths by Marcus Buckingham, who's also somebody I looked up to a lot in my industry.
Awesome. Actually, one more question. If you had to start over today.
Oh God, it's so hard.
I know, but
to start from scratch today versus even 2 years ago. Oh my. Well, everyone's in a different situation, right? You have a family, you don't have a family, like you come from a certain amount of money, you don't, like there's so many variables. It's just, it's hard to know how much time someone can actually dedicate. And there's this, everyone's situation is so different. And today is so much, the amount of effort it takes is so much greater than even 2 years ago. I wouldn't want to start from scratch now, but if I did, I would start small. Start small, like interview whomever, someone no one's heard of in your industry. Like just start small, because starting small is so valuable. Because here's the example I like to give. And I know this is longer, but I think this is valuable. It's, okay. I've done a lot of TV. And if I went from never being on TV to the Today Show, I think I might not have performed well, and I wouldn't have been asked back ever again. And I would look bad to a lot more people. But because I did like local TV in Boston and local ABC and all this stuff, like that was kind of like my build confidence. Yeah. I like understood like sound bites. So it's starting small. I think you'll screw up when it's big enough if you don't start small. Yeah. And I think that's with everything. It's like the whole thing was, oh, millennials or whomever, Gen Z want to be the CEO tomorrow. Well, if they did that, they'd fail.
Yeah. Right.
So what's the point? Yeah. What's the point?
Yeah. It's great advice. That's really great advice. You got to build that muscle over time, and it takes time.
Yeah. So I'm more prepared to interview whomever today because it's been 3,000 interviews. I'm more prepared. Someone was like, do a global study of 50,000. Well, I've done a study of 16,000.
Right.
So I'm more likely to be able to do the bigger one because I've already done so many. But if I skip, I could fail. And then it's harder to succeed because now that person who gave me the opportunity wouldn't work with me again. And to me, especially in the client services business, like you have to be flawless. Like you can't make mistakes. Like everything I do has to be successful. It's really hard.
Only 4.0s.
Not that way. Accounting was so. I forgot his name, but first day at Bentley, the accounting professor was like, "Most of you will fail." It was awful. So bad.
Oh man.
But honestly, I'm just not an accountant. My wife could do that. I just can't do it. That's not how that's not how I'm wired.
No, you got to play in your strengths, dude. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us on Return on Reputation. I can find you right now.
Say LinkedIn. LinkedIn. Yeah, I think LinkedIn is a good spot because I'm really spending most of my time on LinkedIn. I don't all the social networks. Like I'll see some stuff you post and whomever. But I think today, for what I'm trying to do, that's a very important caveat. I think more if I spend all my time on LinkedIn, I believe I will get more ROI than spreading myself across the other networks. That's my assessment.
I think LinkedIn is the number one.
They actually opened up something new on LinkedIn that you might not know about. Is now they have a whole channel for influencers whereby brands can contact you through LinkedIn. And that's as of 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty. So they're more invested in that too. And so it's hard to look at that and be like, oh, I should post less or just spend more time on Instagram. Everyone's trying to fight for users. LinkedIn took people over from TikTok and like all that stuff. So
I think LinkedIn's the best. It's a lot of fun. I've actually built real relationships there. It's like a Twitter-esque from 2009. Yeah. Like there's a real connection to be built there. So thanks again, man. I appreciate it. I know you got to run, but we got to do this again soon.
You got it. Take care, Justin.
All right. Don't go anywhere.